Republican politicians decided to really show how barbaric they can be this week, and they're wearing their immorality on their sleeve. So in a letter to President Trump, Senator Jerry Moran, along with Senators Tom Cotton, Roy Blunt, Jim Inhofe, John Boozman, Tim Scott, Cory Gardner, Tom Tillis, Pat Roberts, Steve Daines, and Orrin Hatch. So you don't need to, all you need to know about them is that they're far-right Republican senators. But here's what they stated in a letter to Trump, quote, "We want to express our support for maintaining and expanding the utilization of the detention facility during your administration by detaining current and future enemy combatants who pose a threat to our national security." They wrote a letter to Trump saying, you should expand Guantanamo Bay. They're amazing, man. So, to your average Joe reading this, let's try to put ourselves in the shoes of the average Joe Republican. You know, somebody in Kentucky or West Virginia or something who, you know, is sympathetic to the Republicans and they voted Republican for their entire life. What would they say about this? They'd probably argue, all right, guys, there are bad people in the world. There are terrorists in the world. There are terrorists who want to kill us. So, yeah, you need to be tough on terrorism. You need to actually have law and order, and you need to crack down on people who are going to do us harm. And if that means you got to have Guantanamo Bay, then you have Guantanamo Bay, and you expand it, and it keeps us safe, and we should be thanking these people for keeping us safe. So that's what I think they would argue. But here's the problem with that. That's not what actually happened at Guantanamo, and that's not what continues to happen at Guantanamo. So at Guantanamo and Abu Ghraib and all these extrajudicial prisons, what we learned from various reports over the years is that when these things were set up, the Bush administration cut a deal with the government and warlords in Pakistan and Afghanistan. And they said, look, we just got attacked here on 9/11, and there's gonna be payback for this. So we know that you guys have a grasp on the situation in your regions, and you know what? I think you should send us whatever jihadists that you know exist, whatever jihadists are around there and doing their thing. So what ended up happening? Just to collect the reward, you had the government in Pakistan and Afghanistan, and you had the warlords that they were cutting deals with. They shipped people to the U.S. and said, here, these are Al-Qaeda. They weren't Al-Qaeda. They were just their political enemies. So they shipped these innocent people, and it turns out you can't trust warlords in Pakistan. Go figure. So we ended up locking these people up indefinitely. No due process, no habeas corpus, no abiding by human rights, no abiding by international law. We tortured many of these people. And it's not just waterboarding. It's crazy that people only bring up waterboarding because actually waterboarding is like the least offensive of the things that we ended up doing. That's a strong comment to make because waterboarding is fucking torture and it simulates drowning. But, you know, we did anal rape, anal feeding, hypothermia torture. You throw cold water on somebody, walk out of the cell, and one time when they came back in the morning, he was dead. And come to find out the guy they did that to was totally innocent. In fact, we know from the Senate torture report that at least 20% is what they admit. 20% of the people they tortured were innocent and didn't do anything wrong. My guess is that's just what they admit to. My guess is it's probably much higher. But even if it is somebody who is guilty or, you know, is a bad guy, what separates us from the enemy is supposed to be that we actually abide by human rights and the Geneva Convention and the Nuremberg Tribunal and fucking Magna Carta, and we're civilized even when the going gets tough. The real test of your principles is whether or not you stick to them when it's the hardest time to stick to them, not when it's the easiest. Nobody needs free speech for somebody to go out there and say, you know, apple pie is delicious and I love mother and aren't rainbows pretty. Everybody agrees to that. So why would you need free speech protections for that? Because nobody's coming to take away those rights. You need free speech protections for when somebody's spewing some hateful garbage. Because you go, hey, look, this is what a free society is. You got to have, you know, the rules in place and you abide by them no matter what. Well, this is where, you know, we lost the plot. And the Bush administration said, when we cut corners, when we don't do due process, when we don't have habeas corpus, when we, you know, violate your protection from unreasonable search and seizure or protection from cruel and unusual punishment. It doesn't count because we're the good guys and we mean well and they're the bad guys. But how do you even know that they're the bad guys if you didn't have a process set up to try to determine and ascertain whether or not they were good guys or bad guys? You don't know. You think guilty enough is what you think. That's it. That's your argument. Guilty enough. So when we act like barbarians, it's fine and it doesn't count and it's okay. And now you have these idiots who have so fully bought into that framework. They've chugged the Kool-Aid, and they've chugged so much of it that they're confident enough to send a letter to the president and say, how about you expand Guantanamo? Well, then what that tells me is you're stupid, but also you're ignorant. Because, look, maybe I'm giving them too much credit, but I would hope to believe that if they knew the facts I just explained to you, like if you show them all the news reports, all the innocent people that we know were innocent, who some of them finally were eventually released, like Murat Kurnaz, who was a German citizen who was picked up in Pakistan and fucking kept and tortured. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? The German government, I think, had to get him out. They were like, that's kind of our citizen. What the fuck are you doing? So I would hope that if these people know, like if Tom Cotton learned about this, Tom Cotton would say, yeah, maybe this isn't a good idea to have Guantanamo Bay, but I really don't know. You know, maybe they just don't care. Maybe maybe the feeling and the sentiment driving them is, even when we do barbaric things, I can overlook it. And I think that the idea of having an extrajudicial prison is more important than actually abiding by what we proclaim our values are. But most importantly, I don't want to hear another word from any of these guys ever fucking again about the Constitution, because they don't believe in the Constitution and they don't believe in human rights. Because if they did, they wouldn't fucking be asking to expand Guantanamo Bay. What are you, crazy? They would never ask that. So it just makes me sick, man, because this is... People like to believe that our bad guys in this country, well, they're not as bad as the bad guys in the other countries. But when you have a situation like this where you know you've locked up and tortured so many innocent people and you don't care about due process and human rights, and then they still say, yeah, fuck it, now I want to expand that, how am I supposed to not think you're as bad as the bad guys in the worst places? Because you are that. I mean, these are the same people who also, you know, they're in favor of these missions, these raids, and these drone strikes that kill countless innocent people, and they don't ever want to reevaluate. You know, Trump killed 30 innocent people in his first military raid, including an 8-year-old girl. Were any of these people upset about it or mad about it? No, they don't care. They're brown people over there. Who gives a shit? You know, he killed 18 people in the second drone strike he did, or military action he did. 18 civilians, I should say. Any word from Tom Cotton? No. Tom Cotton, Tom Tillis, Pat Roberts, Orrin Hatch, Jim Inhofe. Nothing. So they're just callous, and they're tribalists, and they love bending the values they supposedly believe in whenever it's convenient, and that's the opposite of what we should do.